Hey everybody, Brandon here, welcome back to another tournament game analysis video. Today we're going to be covering game number 7 from the Quebec Open. I just had 2 losses in a row after a very good start to a tournament. And even my first loss, I played excellent and just missed one move, and it was like one of the worst moves, but played pretty well for the most part during that game. And then the second loss, we don't talk about that one. Now I'm playing against Rachel, and I'm trying to recover from the tilt. I'm still fairly tilted, so that's a problem. But let's get into the game. E4, C5, knight F3, and knight C6. So we're getting a repeat, pretty much, of my first game, which was, or second round, my apologies, where I also had a Ross Limo. This time, I looked a little bit more into the repertoire that I was working on at the time, and I realized that I should take on C6. So I took on C6 here. B takes C6, and I played D3. Now after D3, we see knight to E7, which is a very strong move. The idea is to bring it to potentially G6, but not immediately. So what I should do here is I should play knight D2. And the idea is if they play knight G6, this isn't really that great now, because I can play H4 and force them into a position where they have to play H5, which is not a move they want to make, because the H5 is significantly weaker than H4. Because they don't have, for example, a move like G3 in the position, whereas we do. Yeah, so the inclusion of these two moves heavily favors white. Instead, I castle, because I'm still really new to the positions. And this isn't as good, because knight G6, H4 is not a move anymore, because H4, they can just take the pawn. And so I play knight D2. And they play E5, which is a very strong move. And now they could come out with a move like D5 in the future, maybe D6 and just natural development. I play rook E1 here, trying to play this like a exchange Ruy Lopez, where I'm going to play like C3, D4. Rook E1, probably not the best. Maybe C3 immediately is better, with the idea of just trying to go for D4 as fast as possible. Still, feels like the opening hasn't really gone our way already, but okay, D6. I play knight F1. Trying to, again, play it like a King's Indian, or not King's Indian, or Ruy Lopez. I'm going to play knight G3, and then C3, D4, H3, like those normal types of moves, but I'm just missing my light square bishop. We see bishop E7. I play C3 here now. We see bishop E6. I play H3, just to prevent any bishop G4s if I end up playing D4. I just thought this move would be useful. And then after H3, my opponent castles, and I play knight G3. So, yeah, black's objectively slightly better here. Rook E8, maybe some sort of bishop F8. Feels like D5 is going to come at some point, and the position's probably going to open up. And this feels like a good Ruy Lopez for my opponent, because I don't have a light square bishop. It's essentially a Ruy Lopez where they got to trade the knight on C6 for my bishop, but they just have like a slightly worse like structure for it. But I would prefer black every single time here. Alright, so there's only one move that I'm kind of hoping to see in this position, and that's actually what gets played. F5. I feel like F5 is just a misunderstanding of how the position should be played, because now I get to get rid of their bishop pair and start opening things up. So E takes F5, bishop takes F5. I immediately decided to take. I could have played D4 first, but no, I just want that bishop really badly. Rook takes F5, and now D4, opening the position, which looks really strange to play D4 here when these pawns look so strong, but you got to break those pawns up any way you can. And yeah, if like rook F8, now we can take on C5, and we're actually just straight up winning, because like they have to play D5 and like to maintain their structural integrity in the center. Like there's just no way they can play something like taking on C5. This would just be losing on the spot as well. Feels like we can just trade and play like bishop E3. Just natural moves here should work totally fine, and it feels like only white's the one pushing, and that's true. White's winning here. But alright, D4, E takes D4, which is a good move. C takes D4, and now rook D5, which I wasn't expecting, and it felt a little off. So my first instinct was to play bishop E3. Turns out they have the crazy move knight E5. And we can't take it. which is a problem. And if we take on e5, this is actually pretty bad for us because they're going to be winning the d4 pawn somehow. Like if queen c2, now they can start taking things like this. C takes d4, and their center is crazy. So we have to avoid that. So instead I played the move queen c2, which is a tricky one. They can't take on d4. The reason why is because if they take, I take on c6, the rook is hit. And once they defend it, this is an equal material position. But when we look at the structures, we have 2 pawn islands. They have 3, but they have double isolated pawns. Like there's not much of an imbalance. Like the piece, we have the same minor pieces, like a knight, and dark square bishop, dark square bishop. It feels like white can only be better here. And with the imbalance, like if you look at it with the fact that there's no other imbalances other than like pawn structure and like king safety, yeah, white's pretty much just winning. This pawn's dropping immediately, so there'll be a pawn down as well. But okay, they don't do that. They play bishop f6. And here I decided to play rook e4, which is fine. I saw after the game that rook takes c5 is possible. This didn't come to mind in the game, just because when you see rook takes, well, they attack our queen, and you know they get the hanging pawn structure. This feels good. I thought rook e4 was a bit more tempting because again, if they take, we can end up in a similar situation where they still have these weak pawns, and it feels like we're the only ones pushing here. This, it's not as good. Because they do get a little bit of activity here. But I'd be happy to play this, personally. Anyways. Rook e4. Queen b6 was played, which kind of forces us into taking now. Unfortunately, bishop e3 doesn't really work at all, because they're covering it enough. And now I can't take on c6. So I took on c5. Rook takes c5 and then queen e2, which was nice because now rook e2 actually has some pros to it because we're creating a little bit of a battery. My opponent ends up playing queen d8 to avoid any checks on the back rank. This probably isn't the best way to play though. Supposedly bishop e3 followed by even rook d1, just giving up the d2 pawn, which is not something I would consider. But rook d1 gives an advantage to white here. I think the line goes like this though, where queen c4 is playable, d5, queen takes c6, and then d5 falls. That's the issue. Which now it's a little bit easier to see why there's a potential advantage here. Actually, rook takes d5 isn't even top move. It's giving like knight g5, which is pretty crazy. Because it can't be taken several times. Like if takes, unfortunately, the queen can't take without a8 falling. But okay, rook c4. I ended up playing instead because my idea was if they took, this is a dream come true. Something like d5 or king h8. We take c6 and we get another position where it's just like equal material, equal imbalances, but I'm up a pawn for nothing. So they played queen e8 instead. Here, queen e8. I took on e8 and then took on c5, and I thought this was pretty promising. It is, but it's also not, because we're going to be losing our b2 pawn and we're going to have to trade it for the c5 pawn. That's the best we got. So we should play bishop e3 here, something like rook b1, and then take on c5. This is the best we got. I didn't go for that. I went for king f1 because I thought I could go for more. But now we're actually a little bit in trouble. They start with 95. Knight takes e5, bishop takes e5. And yeah, I was looking at rook b1 here, but I was really scared of some sort of like rook b8 and then c4. Like if I play b3 here, then c4 looks like a problem. And this was not something I was looking forward to. Turns out we can just ignore it, go king e2, but that's not really something we want to do when we see the pawn on c4, potentially even just pushing to c3, which is not easy to get, like, pick up because the bishop is defending it extremely well. So instead, I play a4 with the idea of rook a2. My opponent plays rook b8, and then I play rook a2. And yeah, actually here, it's just really bad for white. Rook a2 is like my last huge mistake. I should have played bishop e3 again. And if rook takes b2, I don't even think I can take here because of, yeah, rook c2. So I just have to play like rook c1 and then take on c5. Bishop d4. Can't even... well, I guess I can take here and then go rook takes c6, but this isn't really that pleasant, as we can see here. But should fizzle out if we're at least accurate enough. I played rook a2 instead, because my idea was I was going to bring my king to c2, then play like rook a3, f3. But it turns out this is just not a good idea. So king f7, king e2, king e6, king d3, king d5, king c2, bishop d4. And now I realize I'm in trouble. Like, they're just going to potentially take on f2. If they don't, then they can play like rook e8 or rook f8 next move as well. Like, if I play f3, then they play like rook e8. And this is definitely not a good position. So I have to try to find some active counterplay. That's my best bet. So that's where I come up with the idea of rook a3. And now I think bishop takes f2 would be a mistake. And it turns out they end up playing it. If they play rook f8 though, this prevents rook f3. And they're threatening to take the pawn anyways. And if I defend it with f3 or f4, let's just say f3, they still get this really annoying activity with rook e8. And white is clearly worse at this point. So, yeah, I play rook a3, but they actually take on f2, and now I feel totally fine. This feels like a pawn I'm happy to give up, because rook f3, bishop back to d4, and now rook f7. And I have a ton of activity. I have the 7th rank now. And a7's being attacked, and they have to defend it somehow, either by pushing the pawn, defending it passively, or playing something like c4. They end up going for c4. And I'm actually happy to see this, because there's a line here where I can just win my pawn back, which is nice. So I kind of escaped really luckily here. So white to move and get the pawn. Alright, so rook d7 check. And, okay, it's a little bit of a trick question, because we don't necessarily win the pawn back, because they can go for repetition. So king c5, we can take on a7. I think we see that. King e5, we can take on g7. We also see that. There's also bishop f4 check here, which is pretty funny. But there's one other move to look at, and that's king e4. They have to keep contact with their bishop. This is the only move that doesn't lose a pawn. But now rook e7 check. And if they go king f5, they will end up losing a pawn. And if they go king d5, it's a repetition. So king f5, they go for it. g4 check. And they have king f6 or king g6. Doesn't matter too much. They go king f6 to attack my rook. But now, I have rook c7. And the problem is c6 is hanging. If they play c5 to defend their pawn, then a7's hanging. And if they play rook b6, which is a funny move that we should look at, rook takes a7. They do not have rook takes b2, because bishop takes b2 pins the bishop to the king. So I was really lucky to find this variation with rook d7 and everything. Rook b4 was played. I ended up taking on c6 and playing a5, keeping the pawn. My opponent played king d5. I played rook c7 first. I could play rook c8, but I thought this was more accurate, where if they go king d6, then I go rook c8. And this prepares for checks as well. Right now I'm threatening a check, and maybe going like rook d7 to attack one of the pawns. Like, let's just say they do nothing here, h6. Like, something that doesn't really help. They have to go king c5 or e5, let's say king e5. And now rook d7 back. I get the 7th rank, and I'm attacking the pawns. As you can see, then I get a little bit of activity here, which is really nice. Because it's like my only active piece, but it's enough to keep me alive. So okay, they go king d6, I go rook c8. King d7 now, and now I go rook f8. The idea of rook f8 is rook f7 check, or rook f5, or even rook f4. Rook b5 was played. And yeah, we immediately go into a line that just draws. Rook f4, bishop f6, and they offer to draw. Not really much of a reason for me to play on. Could take on c4. Rook f5 is losing, so I have to be careful of that. This might look tempting at first, but things just start to fall because black's king gets more active, and my pawns are all like really scattered. I have pretty much like this. These are, you can count the b2 and a5 pawns as 2 pawn islands, honestly, because the c4 pawn does a really good job of preventing me from moving forward. So I have like 4 pawn islands as opposed to their 3. Their king is going to get more active than mine. Their bishop's better than mine. There's a lot of pros for them, and this would be bad. But of course, that's not what happens. I was going to take on c4 here, and that covers the game. That was the game. It was a draw, but at least it wasn't a loss. I saw this as a little bit of a recovery from my last 2 games, which were horribly played. This one was not really too inspiring either, but at least it wasn't a loss. And that's going to cover it for this round. Hope that was interesting. I thought that the opening was a bit surprising, especially seeing them playing f5, which let us get back in the game, I felt like, because it felt really miserable before f5. And that's about it. So I will see you all in round number 8. So have a good one. Bye-bye.